What is going on, guys? Welcome back. MMA Show, Ryan Moody, Jimmy Smith. Might sound a little different. Up until really this afternoon, we're using one carrier for our audio. They have let us down in ways I cannot describe. So we have had to go to a different carrier for the time being. We've used them before. It's strange. I wonder sometimes, Jimmy, why podcasts don't work out. And, in our short tenure here, we've already went through like 3 different carriers. So I think that might be part of it. It's such an inconsistent means of recording. It's very strange. So if anyone has any suggestions, me and Jimmy are not the most tech savvy people. So, if anyone has any suggestions about recording high fidelity, we will gladly listen. But now we will move in to Joshua versus Ruiz 2. It's going to be for the IBF, IBO, WBA. All the titles on the line, right? Ruiz off an absolute stunner win. I think a lot of people have overlooked the fact that Jarrell Miller was the original opponent here, right? If we go back to the first fight, this was supposed to be Anthony Joshua almost, coming to America to a degree, really beloved, really had a takeover of fans, and a lot of trash talk by Jarrell Miller. Then he fails 3 drug tests, and they pick a guy out of nowhere that not a lot of people heard about, Anthony Ruiz, who doesn't look the part. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And he comes in and stuns the world, right, Jimmy? I mean, I remember watching this fight like very few other fights before.
And it's a story of why we watch fighting. It was the Rocky story. It's Rocky in real life. When you see these guys, and we'll talk about, once again, the differential in builds later, but Andy Ruiz Jr. didn't look like he belonged anywhere near a ring with Anthony Joshua. He just didn't. Like you said, late notice replacement, didn't have the amateur pedigree, didn't have the hype coming in at all, didn't have the build, and he knocks him out after getting knocked down. I can't overemphasize that enough. This was not a punch that caught him out of the blue and dropped him. He was floored himself, came back, knocked down Anthony Joshua, and completely flipped this fight around. So it had all the elements of the kind of story that we love in fighting. Not just in boxing, but in combat sports, period. Underdog comes out of nowhere and beats the champion after tasting the canvas himself. Great stuff. A really great story. I don't know if we'll see that again in our lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, it gets overstated a little bit, right? I mean, we talk about, Tyson Douglas. I really do put this almost right up there with that. The only exception being, that wasn't a late notice replacement fight, a little bit different circumstances, being as, that was a fight that really couldn't be sold here. But, Anthony Joshua was really meant to be made into a star. And I think when you look at the fight that we're into now, it's really going to determine whether his star continues to grow or whether Andy Ruiz is that, kind of that kryptonite to him, because, Anthony Joshua has seen tough fights before. He's seen adversity before. Just, you always seem to have that one fighter that, maybe you can't get past. And this is going to be the telltale fight, right? I mean, this is going to be, Hasim Rahman and Lennox Lewis, right? When they rematch, what's going to happen? The improbable already took place. But when they rematch, is it still going to be the way we saw it happen, or is it going to be the way we think it's going to happen? Because, as you said on paper, I don't want to discredit Anthony Ruiz. I think there's almost been some body shaming with this man to a degree. But to that point, if you were going to carve a boxer out of stone, Anthony Joshua is what he would look like. And I think that's such the big tell of this visual context, right? The visual story is they just don't look like they're both, from the same cloth. And in many ways, they're really not.
We had an interesting conversation about this earlier that I want to let the fans in on, which is, you said, with all the body shaming going on for Andy Ruiz Jr., you said, I don't remember that for Butterbean. I don't remember that for other fighters that were kind of built like him. My caveat, my response to that is, none of the fighters built like Butterbean were serious heavyweight contenders. Won the title. We've put up with freak show builds in boxing, in MMA, whatever. The guy looks like King Kong Bundy. we don't expect those people to become champions. We don't expect them to really excel. Butterbean was never a heavyweight contender in real life. Okay, he wasn't. Hong Man Choi is not a fantastic mixed martial artist who ended up winning titles, all right? The freak show guys, generally speaking, build-wise, don't rise to the elite level. They don't become champions. So it kind of takes that from novelty to real legit champion, which a lot of purists don't like. We want to see a champ that looks like a Mike Tyson, like a Klitschko, a Lennox Lewis, an Anthony Joshua. We want to see those guys become champions. Guy like Andy Ruiz Jr. become champion. Now, personally, I love it because I love his technique. I love his heart. I love his combinations. I love what he brings to the ring. But that pushback, the body shaming you're talking about, I think is really about the heights to which he has ascended more than how he looks. We don't expect a guy like that to be champion. We'll watch them in a journeyman local show. We won't watch them win the heavyweight title, which is what he did.
He brings a Snicker bar to the ring, Jimmy, and he admits it, and he loves it. And I think that's a great thing. There's a common man to some of this that we don't always see excel in sports. I guess to my point, though, when you go back and you look at Butterbean, or if we go back and we talk about,
Foreman a little bit. Foreman got a little bit of that, remember? If you're old enough to remember that, which I don't know if you are.
Well, we were a different time, right? After those fights took place, they weren't making an hour documentary to preview the second one, right? When Tyson and Douglas happened, the first thought wasn't, well, can't wait to make a mini series out of this so we can sell the third one. We're in a sport now where everything has to become entertainment, and that's, what they want to do. And if you have an opportunity, and we mentioned this a little bit earlier, like you said, and unfortunately you hadn't, they did a little documentary, kind of like a one night, if you will, about this fight. And I thought that it was very, very interesting that the people that they brought on to talk about Andy Ruiz clearly weren't educated to what he was as an athlete or a boxer, and were very willing to sit there and engage in short-sightedness of saying, hey, just doesn't look like he's going to win. Looks like a guy from down the street. I believe Michael Strahan said he looked like a guy that had just knocked some crumbs off of him. At the end of the day, we're not just throwing a random person in for the heavyweight championship of the world. But often, like we talked about, the context of Jarrell Miller, this was his fight. If you go back and watch some of the trash talk, there was some nasty trash talk. And how do you fail? Seriously, how do you fail 3 drug tests to even get into this position? But it's where we are. But it really is interesting to me that so passively we've just accepted this mindset of Andrew Ruiz doesn't look like he should be here, so therefore he doesn't belong. And oh, by the way, even though he's the defending champion, he still doesn't belong there. It's very, very strange. You don't see it really at all.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. Also, the other line that I kind of touched on a little bit is we're talking about Anthony Joshua was an Olympic gold medalist. Andy Ruiz Jr. had an extensive amateur career, I think like 105 wins and 5 losses or something like that. He fought a lot as an amateur, but didn't get to those heights. Was not an Olympic gold medalist. All right, came close to the Olympic qualifier, didn't qualify. So there's also that. The A side in boxing is usually the decorated amateur. They get over. The guys who don't have the great amateur career, Olympic gold medalists, Olympic berths, they're stuck, working their way up the journeyman route. All right, the Marvin Hagler and Sugar Ray Leonard, those were the 2 different routes, right? The golden boy who won a gold medal in Canada versus Hagler, who had just come from Brockton, Mass. And work his way up. And so that's another storyline that Joshua was supposed to be here. He had the pedigree to get here. Ruiz did not, in the eyes of boxing purists. And they haven't yet kind of cleared those cobwebs out. And having been on the other side of doing documentaries about an upcoming fight, you always want to give the fans a story and a reason to watch. And what I've noticed when I was doing it is you try not to hype one guy at the expense of someone else, because then you say, well, why should I watch this? Right? Man, Mike Tyson's great. Mike Tyson's this, Mike Tyson's that. And you go, okay, well, Mike Tyson's going to kill this guy. Why do I care about this Buster Douglas character? You have to be able to balance the card out, or else you're giving the audience a reason to not watch.
All right, let's go back to the start of all this and try to give some perspective of how things may be different this time. So, first thing, obviously, Anthony Joshua now full camp versus just really 5 weeks to prepare. So you've got a game plan in place. Do you feel like he's going to be more prepared for Andy Ruiz than he was if he hadn't actually done this prior?
I think he'll look better. When you look at them on stage, the one thing that should jump out to you is, God, he should have just jabbed his way to victory really easily, right? He should out-jab this dude. Guess, all right, do you know how tall Andy Ruiz Jr. is?
Don't look. He can't be more than 5'11", 5'10".
He's 6'2". That's his official height.
Wearing
and
what?
How tall did he? What's up?
Wearing what shoes?
Yeah, right. How tall did he look next to Anthony Joshua on stage? Like a kid. That's what he looked like. I'm not insulting the guy. I'm saying compared to Joshua, who was a damn giant, what did he look like? Looked like a child. He looked like a child next to that guy. Why? Because Anthony Joshua is 6'6". So he should be able to jab around him all day. If he had stuck to his boxing fundamentals and used rangy punches and never let Ruiz inside, he should have walked away with that one. But every time he let Ruiz inside, what impressed me was the power, the speed, and the accuracy of Ruiz's combinations. This was not a lunky punch knockout. He had really tight combinations. This is a matter of range, and that should have been, assuming his trainers knew what they were doing, that should have been 90% of his camp, was understanding and maintenance of range. Because if you keep Ruiz outside, he can't land any punches. You let him inside, he is an excellent puncher. I really thought he threw great combinations. So that should have been 90% of his camp. If he can do that, he'll win. But I'll let you start about what you think about the finish and what the referee allowed of him. But did Anthony Joshua's heart and desire get exposed? That can't be fixed easily in the gym. That can't be easily fixed anywhere. Were there issues with his heart and his resolve and his determination? If that was the issue, I think Ruiz wins again. If it's a tactical issue, you can fix all that. But as soon as the going really got tough, he seemed to fold pretty hard.
No, I agree completely. I mean, Ruiz got inside, got a lot of shots behind the ear, clearly got the equilibrium with Joshua a couple times. And you could tell that, he just wasn't used to being there. His body was not responding. What he was trying to do was not functioning because he had been hit and he had been hurt. Now, I guess it's odd the way you looked at it, as far as really what we thought would work for Joshua worked almost against him. You expected him to work behind the jab. You expected him to keep distance. You expect him. I really was surprised. No body shots, even fighting a smaller fighter. Really, I don't think worked Ruiz's body really at all, even though he did have the first knockdown, which I think might have been a hook that knocked him down. But, to me, I think it's going to be confidence. And when I look at Andy Ruiz, I see a lot of confidence. He's carrying around a lot of belts. He's got a big smile on his face, and he should. He convincingly won that first fight. To your point, the referee gave Anthony Joshua every out. He turned his back to the fight. He spit his mouthpiece out. He put his hands up on the ropes when he got to the corner. We talked about this after it happened, and it was really, those are all things where, if you've been around fighting, are signs of somebody that just doesn't want to fight. As soon as you spit your mouthpiece out, it's over. As soon as you put your hands up on the ropes, it's over. He gave him and even looked at him like, I'm going to give you every opportunity to save yourself. So I guess it's really up to the mindset of Anthony Joshua, as you said, more than anything else. If he's content in saying, hey, that last fight was a bad performance, I'm going to change things. I'm not going to let him get inside. I'm going to work the body. I'm going to drain his confidence. I'm going to stay behind my jab. then he can come out and win this fight. But if he can't learn from that, then you've got a real problem. And you're probably going to have a fighter that looks at as being exposed and goes from really who could have been considered one of the all-time greats that's been through some wars to a guy that, he could never get past, Ruiz. And that's going to be why everyone tunes in the second time. Or what are we going to see his legacy become? Is it going to be he came back and did what we thought he could do, or Andy Ruiz had his number? Remember how great he was, but he couldn't get past Andy Ruiz.
The other thing working against Anthony Joshua, in a sense, first off, there are two other standout heavyweights out there, right? Wilder and Fury. Also, if he beats Ruiz, everybody's going to want a rubber match, depending on how the fight looks. If he just blows Ruiz out of the water, I think people will see that, maybe Ruiz got lucky or whatever like that. But if it's even somewhat competitive, people are going to want a rubber match. So he has a taller mountain to climb, I think, than the other heavyweights. Wilder and Fury, for example, they're pretty much set. They are on a collision course, I think, in February. Joshua is not done yet. It's not like he beats Ruiz and he's right back where he was. He has to beat Ruiz again and then beat the winner of Wilder Fury. And then, okay, we got something. So he has a tougher mountain to climb, and he knows it. So that's going to be playing on him as well.
We had went over in the Tito podcast, the Tito and Alberto Del Rio show that we did, that obviously we have one of the best partners in all of MMA. And let me just say, we have sponsors come to us, and Jimmy and I are both of the same ilk that we will not think twice about turning down a sponsor unless we know they are professional, they are dependable, they are reliable, and there's something that Jimmy and I would use. So, when the male enhancement products came a call in, we were like, thanks, but no thanks. We're not going to sell them here. We're not going to sell them to you guys. But with Fight TV, honestly, they are one of the absolute best in the game. They are giving you guys a copy of, or I guess a copy is the wrong word. They're giving you the opportunity to watch the pay-per-view of Tito Ortiz and Alberto Del Rio later on this week. I'm going to go ahead and give the coaching now. Jimmy will put a link down in the description. All you have to do, go over there, log into your account, click buy now, click that you have a coupon code, and put in the code, and I will read it to you phonetically. Lowercase D as in David, capital Z as in zebra, lowercase d as in David, uppercase D as in David, uppercase Q as in Queen, 0, I as in Indigo, the number 1. All you have to do, thank you to the fine folks over at Fight TV for supporting us. So, Jimmy, with that said, obviously, you were looking forward just a bit. I want to look bigger picture, because I don't think a couple years ago we were talking about what's next in any form of boxing. Do you feel like where we are now with Tyson Fury, with Wilder, with the influx coming back in boxing, that we needed this big flash in the pan moment of the first fight that Ruiz and Joshua had to kind of bring average eyes back, bring the casual back? This is a story a lot of people talked about. And then obviously now we've got a much hyped rematch. Do you feel like this was just all the right things at all the right time to a degree to just rejuvenate boxing, at least in America?
Yes. And what this brought back is that sense of unpredictability that draws us to combat sports. Anybody can win at any time. You take one on the chin and it's over. And, everybody was kind of like wondering about with Joshua and Wilder and Fury, who ended up on top and, what's the next step for these guys? And boom, out comes this bolt of lightning and it changes everything. And that helps. Also, there's so many storylines to Andy Ruiz Jr., right? Mexican-American, doesn't have the boxer's body, the humble guy you can really root for, the common man. I think it's a great, unpredictable injection into this story. Right? It changes everything, and I like that. I like that a lot.
Well, it definitely is going to be, to me, the highlight of the whole weekend. I know there's a lot of fights going on. You've got the Tito fight we've talked about. You've had UFC. I think the most anticipated moment for me over the course of the weekend is going to be watching this boxing match again. And I'll tell you, it's been a long time since I can sit here and confidently say to you, I'm more excited about boxing than I am UFC.
I don't disagree with you. I think this is going to be a great fight. Once again, a lot of storylines. The UFC card this weekend is good, but it's a fight night on ESPN. It's not a big pay-per-view, and I do think it might lead to a more interesting fight. With that said, we appreciate you guys checking this out, and we will be back very shortly with more commentary.